So many powerlifters get their accessory work completely wrong. Now, some of them change them every block like clockwork, whilst others haven't touched theirs in a year. Both think that they're right. If you're confused whether your accessories deserve the same level of planning as your main lifts, this is the video to give you clarity. Now, if you're new here, my name is Norman Chung and I've been coaching international powerlifters for over 13 years, and I aim to give you everything that you need to know about powerlifting programming on this channel. Now, before we answer the question of whether we need to periodize accessories, we first need to answer why we even prescribe accessories in the first place. Now, in the bigger picture, accessories exist on a spectrum from general to specific. The more specific they are to your accomplishing lifts in terms of movement pattern, range of motion, and muscle groups, the more directly that they are to contribute to the skill transfer and force production for those lifts. Now, the more general that they are, the more they act as long-term capacity builders, building muscle mass and strength that can later channel into your main lifts. You should note that your decision to periodize accessories isn't just about changing the exercise for exercise's sake. It's also about deciding whether you need to shift that exercise's place on a specificity spectrum over time. Now, there are two main goals that you should keep in mind when it comes to the purpose of accessories. The first one being long-term hypertrophy development, and the second one, which is the short-term performance needs. Now, with long-term hypertrophy, it is a substantial predictor and mechanistic basis for maximal strength, as confirmed by research, though it is not the sole determinant and individual variation still exists. Now, with regards to short-term performance needs, we have a discussion of qualities and quantities. The quantitative aspects to this refers to the management of volume and intensity to bring about force production adaptations, as well as management of fatigue. Specifically, short-term fatigue management is obviously a crucial consideration in the short term. Now, the qualitative aspects to this, it refers to the technical needs of the athlete. Now, the skill acquisition needs of the athlete is going to be in a state of flux, meaning that it can change more frequently than the constant needs of hypertrophy. For example, a lifter who's struggling to stay tight at the bottom of a squat might benefit from leg press for a while. Once that issue resolves, that same slot in the program might be better served with a slightly different variation, such as a hack squat. Also, as athletes evolve in their body shape and technique, for example, changes in squat stance, grip width on a bench, or deadlift style, what gives the athletes the best return on investment in accessories may change too. So, if the athlete context changes, the needs of the athlete and therefore optimal solutions may change. So, should we periodize training accessories? Now, I'd love to give you a straight yes or no answer, but the truth is, like all things, it depends. So here, I will make the case for and against periodizing accessories for different situations. Now, periodizing accessories just means to strategically manipulate the variables around accessories over time. Oh, by the way, if you want to learn a little bit more about periodization for powerlifting conceptually, check out my video on periodization for powerlifting in the description box below and on the tag here. So let's talk about the case for periodizing accessories. Now, on one hand, there is a strong case for doing it, and it really depends on how you use that lever as well. You want to think about accessory periodization as an optional tool. You don't have to use it, but it's there. My thinking is nothing should ever be ruled out in programming. It's just understanding the impact and the trade-offs. So the first benefit is fatigue management. You can pull it during peaking blocks and deloads, especially when you're trying to manage fatigue a little bit more aggressively because you need to. So swapping out certain accessories or backing off intensity and volume on them can bring about overall stress levels down without the need to touch the main lifts too much. That can be super useful when you're trying to maintain specificity without running the athlete into the ground. And it's not just about deloads or peaking either. You can also periodize accessories as a way to reactively manage fatigue within the block as well, whether it's rotating high stress movements in and out or simply just adjusting the volume and intensity of those accessories. Just because it was planned out originally doesn't mean that you must always execute according to plan. So let's talk about the second benefit, which is optimizing the dose for the main lifts. You can also periodize and refine accessory training dose and monitor its impact on SBD performance on subsequent days. This is where a lot of you lifters underutilize their training logs, especially when they don't fill out their weights and RPEs in their training program. If you actually track accessory performance trends and how they correlate with subsequent main lift performance, you can start to make data-driven decisions. For instance, you might find that keeping the leg presses heavier improves deadlift execution off the floor, but keeping the RPE low may make the strength off the floor feel a little bit lackluster. That said, you've got to be careful. When you're dealing with a multivariate system where multiple variables interact and change at the same time, often influencing each other in complex ways, throwing in even more layers of complexity with accessory periodization can muddy the waters. You might end up with too many variables shifting at once and not know what's working and what's not. But if you're self-coached or you're coaching a lifter where you're managing the main lifts pretty well, then periodizing the accessories may be a useful thing to explore. So let's talk about the third benefit, which is athlete psychology and buy-in. Now, periodizing accessories isn't just about dose and fatigue management. Sometimes it's about psychology. If an athlete enjoys an accessory, they're more likely to push it hard and log it accurately and take it seriously. On the flip side, forcing an athlete to grind through accessories that they hate for months because of specificity and usefulness can actually lower the training intent. In some cases, rotating the accessory just to keep the athlete mentally engaged can have a bigger payoff than keeping it the same purely for data cleanliness. The fourth benefit is a novel stimulus. Changing up the accessory movements can provide a novel physiological stimulus, which can potentially re-sensitize the athlete to further adaptations through slight changes in the strength curve of the exercise. Also, as an athlete evolves, their weaknesses shift, their leverages adapt, and their goals develop. So your exercise selection should reflect that. And so periodizing accessories can be one of the ways to adapt to those changing needs over time. The fifth benefit is meeting neglected qualities. Another case for periodizing accessories is for a lifter who has a somewhat restricted training schedule. So these lifters often will have less days to train or shorter sessions that they can train around. For lifters like these, you're going to have to take a bit more of a bottom-up approach to periodizing their programs, namely answering the big questions of what qualities do they need the most now and what's most urgent. The reason why I say this is because, unfortunately, some less important accessories may be missed due to periodization. But here's the interesting thing. Over time, the more that they are missed, those less important accessories climb in a rank of importance and urgency as they are neglected over time. For this reason, this is an argument for periodizing accessories. So let's talk about the case against periodizing accessories. The first drawback is simply the unnecessary complexity. If you're already periodizing the main lifts, the squat, bench, and deadlift, then adding extra moving parts to the accessory movements, it might just overcomplicate things for very little return. Also, when it comes to hypertrophy, research doesn't really support accessory periodization as a must-have for hypertrophy outcomes, at least not consistently. You can still make very good continuous hypertrophy gains without actually periodizing the accessories. As the person writing the program, if you're constantly changing accessories, tracking progress on them, and programming them in more advanced ways, that's attention taken away from managing the comp lifts. So the second drawback is periodization is not necessarily the answer to your problem. You often see this when there seems to be this sort of feel that there is a lack of results or adaptations from the accessories. If that's the case, it's worth asking whether the real problem is a lack of periodization or simply a lack of effort, clarity of the goal, or progress tracking of the accessories. A perfectly designed program with accessories won't do much if the lifter treats the accessories like fluff work. So the solution here is just a bit more awareness of what the goal is for each accessory exercise being implemented. If hypertrophy is the goal, then muscular output and effort needs to be prioritized. If mobility and movement is the goal, then internal cueing and feeling the stretch and tension in the right places may need to be prioritized. The third drawback is too many variables influencing fitness and fatigue levels. Now, one important aspect of periodizing training programs is to manage variables so that you can influence fitness and fatigue patterns. Fitness and fatigue patterns refer to the patterns of which days are going to be slightly more fatigued and which days are going to be a bit stronger. This is an important process of program design so that your strength can show up on competition day. When you change accessories or accessory prescriptions too often, it's harder to know what's actually driving the progress. You can create more volatility, and that can mess up your ability to track trends or carry momentum across blocks. Plus, when your main lifts are already being periodized intelligently and your accessories are laid onto that as a supplement to the prime movers, you may already have all the periodization that you need. So if you're managing fatigue through the main lifts, you're progressing. In a lot of cases, it's just not necessary to make accessory periodization a priority. At the end of the day, periodizing accessories isn't just a binary decision. It's a sliding scale of how much you want to actively manage them relative to the main lifts. In high-level programming, accessories aren't an afterthought. There needs to be clear intention as well as good judgment on how to manage them through time. But the ultimate return on investment depends on the lifter's needs, the coach's ability to measure the outcomes, and the athlete's consistency in execution. So, periodize them if it serves the goal. Otherwise, keep them stable if it doesn't. And always remember, tools are only as useful as the hands that they're in. So I hope you guys found that video useful. Click like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.